All right, everyone. The Supreme Court has taken action now with regards to the SNAP benefit showdown, contingent on the government shutdown, which blocks SNAP funding mostly. There is some side funding that's still available, and the Trump administration has already begun freeing that up to try to make the notes good for as long as possible. But it's on brownout mode. So then you have the normal SNAP benefits, but those haven't been allocated. And as the Trump team pointed out, we can allocate them because Congress has to act. We don't have the legal authority to do so. The House specifically controls the purse strings. So, Congress, get to it. Trump can't control the Republicans in Congress, and Schumer can barely corral his own Democrats, even though he's actually a member of the legislature. So you have this sort of weird impasse, and now the shutdown has dragged on far longer than any other, and it's probably going to be at least a few weeks until that ends. Now, a judge had commanded Trump to free up more fund to fully fund the program. But as he pointed out, and this is why SCOTUS agreed with Trump, you can think what you want about the SNAP program. I think that it's one of the better, you know, welfare programs that we have in the United States because at least there's a form of return on investment, and it is important for a lot of people. But it's true, Trump is fundamentally correct. He cannot unilaterally take money and pump it into the SNAP program without Congress actually allocating the money. Well, right now it doesn't even have a budget. Congress is responsible for that. Trump, his only role, really, other than using the bully pulpit, and he's been trying to harangue this entire time, both the Republicans and the Democrats, by the way, his only role is to take his pen, or auto pen, I suppose, that's allowed now apparently, and either sign or veto the budget. That's basically all he can do. Congress has to allocate the actual funding. Well, if you don't have a budget, there's no funding allocated. So only the funding that was already pre-allocated and was already there can be freed up, and Trump already had pledged to do that, but you can't really do anything else at the executive level. And I think a lot of times, a lot of the propaganda that you see really boils down to people not really, I mean, they didn't learn civics much in high school, so they probably don't know what the separation of powers means, what the three divisions of government are, the role of the federal government versus the states, in many cases, under the 10th Amendment and various other auspices. So they don't understand. It's like most people think the federal government is responsible for much of their misery, much of the regulatory burden. In many cases, it's more the state and even municipalities, your city or precinct or something like that. A lot of the rules and regulations are made at those levels. That which is federal generally is the result of bureaucratic action, bureaus that were created by Congress, by acts of Congress, and then grew and grew and grew and became more and more burdensome because that's what bureaucracy tends to do. I would note that some of the people in Congress today voted in favor of some of the things that later on they bitched about because they voted to incept a bureau, and then they said, whoa, 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 wait, that's not your role. And why are you asking us to put an extra zero on your budget? The bureaucracy is really, at the federal level, the main abuser. Not Congress, certainly not the President of the United States. By the way, Portland won't see the National Guard for a while. That'll end up being probably overruled in the future as well. That's going to be a major potential Supreme Court case in the future, by the way. Um, in this particular case, I believe that it was justified to injunct the lower court's ruling, which would have forced Trump to find the money elsewhere. He's not allowed to do that. Under the Constitution, the president cannot, I mean, if you're using discretionary spending for things related to national defense and security and things, it's been resolved that that is a presidential power. But it can only be used for certain purposes. So you can't use it to fund the SNAP program. You can't just magically move money, which has been earmarked already under a prior budget or some other auspice. You can't just magically wave a magic wand and say, well, the money now belongs to the SNAP program. Trump's hands effectively at the moment are tied. He's got an itchy itchy hand waiting to grab the pen and sign off on a friggin' budget. It's Congress that has to actually make it, though. So if the Republicans and the Democrats at large in the House and the Senate can't find some sort of common footing and figure out what to do, then the SNAP funding can't go through. There's no legal framework by which Trump can actually do anything about it other than use the bully pulpit and say, get it going. He can chastise the Republicans and say, work harder. He can chastise the Democrats and say, at least come to the table. Eventually, you might have some sort of negotiated sort of system that happens. Like the Democrats were asking to extend the ACA subsidies for 1 year, as well as give, handouts basically to other people. Schumer is being disingenuous the way that he's framing the Democrats' proposal, their counter proposal to the Republican budget, admittedly. And Trump can't do anything about it. Some people think of him as some sort of dictatorial god emperor. It's not the way that the government works. So Congress will create a budget. And then it goes to Trump's desk. And then Trump says yay or nay. At that point, it becomes his responsibility if he vetoes it. So let's say that the Democrats do manage to prevail. The Republican ranks crumble. They start hopping off and they vote for the Dem version of the bill. If Trump chooses to sign it, okay. Well, I mean, the Democrats fundamentally are responsible for that budget. Trump has merely said, I'm throwing my hands up, whatever, at least there is a budget now, so here's your SNAP benefits. If he chooses to veto at that point, any fallout becomes immediately his responsibility. Congress would have to then take action. At that point, probably they would end up with a veto-proof majority in both the House and Senate anyway, so I don't know why he would bother standing in the way if that does happen. So we'll see what happens over the next probably weeks. They're still trying to formulate some sort of deal, but they've tried voting on it now, what, 15 times or some insane number like that? And it's dragged on now for well over a month. It's becoming a little bit ridiculous. But when people are blaming Trump for it instead of putting the blame on Congress, both the GOP and the Dems, because they're not capable of apparently rationally working together under most circumstances, well, then, that's a problem now, isn't it? That's about all. Peace out.